Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for coming to the channel. It's your boy Joe ZG here, and with me today, I've got a good friend, composer, game developer, fellow Renaissance man, Andy Aversa, who you may know as Zircon if you're in the Overclock Remix community.
That's right.
Andy, thanks for coming on today and chatting with me. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, hey, thanks, Joe. I've known Joe for a while. We both came from the same video game music kind of scene. And so my background is as a professional composer first and EDM producer, but I got kind of bored with that. And I kind of made my way into video game development. We came out with our first game, Tangle Deep, back in 2018. Our second game just came out as of recording this today, Flowstone Saga.
Okay, so tell me about the origin of Flowstone, because as I mentioned to you after I played it, like if someone had come up to me and been like, hey, I'm gonna make Tetris really interesting, I would have been like, get out of here, right? Like Tetris is just never my bag. Like it's super popular. I understand I'm not poo-pooing it, but like it was just, I couldn't care about it. And like 10 minutes into playing Flowstone Saga, I was like, they made Tetris interesting. I didn't think they could do that. So talk to me about like how this game got started. Where did it start?
The kind of like the director, the person that came up with the idea was my partner, Andrew Lewers. And so he is like an expert. Fun story, actually. He was one of the people in the Nintendo World Championships back in the late 80s or early 90s. That was the championship thing where every one of the top 100 got a game cartridge that is now worth like $50,000. So yeah, he's like a old school gamer, and he's really good at puzzle games. And he just had this concept of like, well, what if we added RPG mechanics into it? And so that was the very most basic idea. And so we started with that, and for the first few years it was really just the combat system. It was like some dialogue, and then we were just kind of polishing up the battles and the monsters. And we ran a Kickstarter for it back in 2020, I think, or maybe early 2021. But it seemed like it didn't connect with people, because it seemed like people were like, well, that part is cool, but what's the reason we're doing this? What's the context? And what people really wanted more of was like the RPG stuff too. Like you need a reason to be in the battles.
Okay, the story.
And yeah, exactly. So we kind of went back to the drawing board a little bit. We changed the visual style completely. We made it way more of like an adventure where you're actually going around. Physically, you could see the monsters instead of just like selecting battle from a list. And then when we redid the Kickstarter, so originally it was called Puzzle Explorers. So again, that's the emphasis on the puzzle part. Then we changed it to Flowstone Saga, and then that Kickstarter actually succeeded, and people were really hyped for it. So this is kind of like the winning combo. It's we put the RPG first, and then it just so happens to have like this puzzle battle system that is very different from any other JRPG. So that's how we ended up here.
Interesting. And you know what? Like that kind of tickles my brain thinking back to. I'm sure you've read Console Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the fantastic game. Book rather about games, and the thesis there was like the name of the game is the game, and it was like all about like, well, the game needs to be good first, like we need good game play. But in your case, it was almost like, well, we were missing some archetypal component of story, and once we could add that in, then the game made sense. You know, like it made like there was a reason for you to engage. That's really interesting. Now that the successful Kickstarter was 5 years ago, or had you already started?
Oh my God. Boy, the second Kickstarter was like 2021, I think. So we had already put in a lot of hours and our own money to create the art for the game, for example, hire people to do sound effects, having writers come on board to like adjust. Any JRPG has a lot of just text in it. And actually, on that note, one of the things that required the most text was all the side quests for the game. Now okay, I know for a fact you were in one of the Yakuza games, right?
Several at this point, yeah.
Okay, so that was kind of one of our inspirations, the recent Yakuza games, for a lot of the side quests.
The Like a Dragon ones? Yeah.
Just stuff that's like unhinged. So we've got, the main story in Flowstone Saga is like down to earth, it's very grounded. But then the side quests is where it just goes off the rails. And so we had a lot of fun. We worked with like several different writers who had ideas for like, what if we did this with this character and just like took it into a totally new direction. And so those side quests, in my opinion, are some of the most fun writing in the game, because we could just like kind of let loose with it. And that's a lot of what we did over the several year period, because a lot of time it's been just making stuff, making art, making music. That stuff, you can't do it quickly, but then you could be writing at the same time, or other people can be writing. They don't have to wait for art to be done to write.
So when did it kind of feel like it was all like about to come together? Like what was the pivot moment where you're like, oh my God, we've got a game?
So there were two moments. The first moment was when we had the first maps in the game where you could actually like run the character sprite around and pick up treasure and see monsters wandering around the map. So that moment when you could first explore, it's like, okay, this feels really good. This is now feeling like it has that kind of classic RPG just vibe to it. Mm-hmm. But then there were just like years of working on just stuff, assets, art, all that other stuff. And then I'd say this year, like maybe 6 months ago, so in the spring, like April 2024, when you could play the whole game from start to finish, 90% of the side quests were done. And with all the battle mechanics, everything kind of in and all interconnected, it really felt like there's like a switch that went off. And I've obviously played the game for thousands of hours, but like feels like a real game at this point.
That's awesome. So you've gotten, I'm assuming like you've sent it out to beta testers, alpha testers, like people have had their hands on this game, right?
Yeah, for sure.
What is it that they keep coming back to you? I'm really stuck on this idea of gameplay versus story. That you kind of like set this up. So like when they come back and they go, this is where I got really involved and engaged, or I like this, or like what was it that you found resonated with that testing audience? So
what's interesting is that a lot of the people that backed the Kickstarter, they didn't want to play the unfinished version, which I completely understand. They had Steam keys to play it at any time, but they're like, we'll wait till it's done. Mm-hmm. So the beta testers, the people that volunteered, also we had some paid QA testers. I believe in paying everybody that actually does the real work on the game. Those people, I think, were really enjoying seeing what happens next, again, with like the side stories in particular, like what thing are we going to throw at them next? And in particular, unlocking more of the combat mechanics. Yeah. So like what crazy thing am I going to be able to do? So as an example, when the game starts, your board is like 12 columns wide, right? So there's blocks coming down. You've got a certain set of blocks, but then you unlock jobs, or we call them frogs, because why not? Right. Like little spirit frogs that give you their power.
Right.
And one of the boards is like 8 tiles wide, so it feels completely different when it's 8 versus when it's 12 columns. And then it has a different set of blocks. What you're trying to do in the battle becomes totally different. So one of the frogs, which is called the Demolitionist, it does more damage the higher your board is. And if it drops TNT at random, this big 2x2 block, if you clear the block, it blows up the bottom 2 lines of the board also. So it's like super high risk, high reward. Okay. You're definitely not trying to just like stack up 4 lines and put a block in the middle. It's completely different than that. And so when people start unlocking things like that, it makes you think like, oh, what other items could I use? What other, powers or skills could I equip to make that feel better? So I think people in the beta of the game, that's what they're really getting into. Because I guess they played the story a lot of times, like the main story.
Sure.
So the side stories were still coming in at the end.
So I basically played like the introductory hour of the game like last week. And I was sort of surprised at how innovative the battle system could get, because you present our brain work in schema. So like you present me the schema of Tetris, and I feel like I know exactly what's going to happen. And I was able to follow into it really quickly. But even in the first 20 minutes of the game, that mechanic is changing rapidly, but not at a pace that I felt like, well, now I'm juggling 90 balls and I'm going to drop all of them. It was like you're adding one little element at a time that just made my brain go, oh, this is something else interesting to think about, right? Like now I can.
Yeah.
It made me feel smarter in a way. Like I was I was outsmarting Tetris. Like, oh, I can take this block and now this is this element and I can put it here. So that's awesome. The music of the game, super cool. So I want to back up for a second. You mentioned Andrew Lewers. Did he draw? Is he the artist for the game?
He did. So last time we chatted a few days ago, we were just kind of like comparing notes. How much time did we spend on this? So he's about 7,000 hours of work on this game. But even with all that time, he still didn't draw literally everything, because some of these maps, they're like 2048 by 2048 pixels. So if you do the math on that, it's like 1 million or something. It's a lot. It's a lot. And that's like one map. So we had, I think, 4 or 5 other artists contributing. But he was the art director, and he certainly did like a lot of what you see. But it's a team effort. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So what's next? The game is officially released, right?
Yep.
Is it today?
Yeah, as of today, at this point, the number one thing is obviously listening to players. If there's stuff that doesn't work quite right, or things are super unbalanced, maybe there's a fight that's way too hard or way too easy. So we want to fix that stuff. We want to add in a few new mechanics and a few new like kind of post-game or optional elements. But it's not the kind of game that you need to update for 2 years, right? It's not like a live service type thing. So we're already thinking about, what the third game basically. We're definitely going to do the updates here, but our mind is shifting to the third game.
That's cool. Well, Flowstone Saga is available now pretty much everywhere. You guys will see links in the description below and all that stuff. Andy, thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit today, and
thanks for having me.
Good luck with the
Appreciate
game.
it.
I can't wait to see what you make next.
Yeah, all right.